What's up there, boys and girls? Thought we'd talk about some flying today. The new flight model that's out now on the dev branch. A couple things you'll see are different now. You got the HUD on the bottom of the screen, your gauges. Pretty handy, pretty handy. Go ahead and start the engines. For some reason they start really fast. I think that's a bug. But as they spool up, you see the left-hand gauge, the RPM is yellow right now. That's that gauge that's moving right there, percent RPM. That's your rotor RPM. You're going to want to keep an eye on that because that will make you crash. Once that's stable, you're ready to lift off. And then if you look at the far right gauge on the HUD, that's your compass. Kind of handy. The one next to that, though, that's going to be one of your more important ones as well. You got it's vertical speed indicator, VSI, and you've got a collective indication on there as well. You see me moving that, and then you see as I move that, my rotor RPM tends to follow it, or it dips as the collective goes up. That's something to keep in mind as well. If you move your collective too fast, your rotor RPM is going to drop and you're going to fall out of the sky. So slow, smooth movements on the collective, that's pretty important now. But here we go. Let's take off. You see the marks on the collective gauge there? Pretty useful for sorting out what kind of power settings you have, so you can tell someone else maybe that's flying with you, give them the same, maybe you're at 75% collective, you can use that third tick mark as a rough estimate of that. But here we go. Alright, I'm off, and you notice right away I start drifting. It's because I've got the wind enabled, so I'm kind of fighting the wind a little bit, and I have to give it, I have a little bit of left rudder held right now to maintain the heading. Now on the same gauge that has my collective and the vertical speed indicator, there's a little cross with a ball in it. That ball will tell you if you're slipping or drifting. So the ball is in front, which means I'm moving forward. Okay, so I start slowing down, and the ball is mostly centered. There we go. I got a fairly decent hover going, but as you start moving forward, it'll move forward, but it still tells you if you're slipping or not. So, like what they teach pilots, it's you step on the ball. So if the ball is on the left side of that line, you give it a little bit of left pedal to bring it straight, and that just coordinates your turn and makes it more efficient. But you'll notice as I start to increase collective and my speed starts to increase, I don't really have to give it as much rudder or tail rotor input because the aircraft will weather vane sort of. But you'll see as I get more and more collective, at some point my rotor RPM is going to drop. There it goes. See, okay, it went red for a second there. That's something that you have to really pay attention to. You're always going to have to keep your rotor RPM in mind. All your maneuvers are going to have to be a little more careful. Now see, I almost crashed it right there because my rotor RPM got too low, and I banked too quickly, and the aircraft didn't like it. So maneuvers that you could pull off in the old flight model may not even be possible now. If they are possible, they'll be much more difficult to do, and they'll require a little more planning. But as we come around the coast here, I'm going to try to stay pretty low and pop up over the trees and then come back to land. Another thing that you have to pay attention to is your airspeed in relation to, or not your airspeed, but your pitch and roll, the aircraft's attitude, because it's now very sensitive to movements. It's really easy to see, I almost did it right there. It's really easy to overcorrect. So you start, you bank it really hard over, and you think, oh shit, I'm gonna roll this thing completely 360 if I'm not careful. So you crank the stick in the other direction, and next thing you know, you're upside down the other way, and you just keep fighting it back and forth and back and forth. You have to, same as the regular flying, you have to be slow and precise movements. You can't, if you overcorrect, you're going to lose it. Speaking of losing it, I have lost the airfield. Oh boy. Not in the trees, not in the trees. There we go. That's not it. Where the hell am I? Oh. I'm way far from where I should be. Now see, there's an example of not overcorrecting. I started to lose rotor RPM, and instead of just cranking the stick to try and level out, I just gave it a nice gradual movement, and that took care of the problem. Usually the best thing you can do is just to level out, keep your collective fairly level, and try not to stall the rotors any worse than they already are. There's the airfield. Okay. Keeping coordinated turns helps with that. Okay, so now as I'm coming into land, you'll see my collective is practically 0. But what I'm doing is I'm just using the aircraft's pitch to maintain my vertical speed, and now as I get slower, I start adding more back in to maintain altitude or maintain a reasonable descent or sink rate. And then as I get slower and closer to the ground, and then I screwed it up by nosing down too much, you have to start adding collective back in. And we're down. Just like that. It's pretty tricky. This is literally probably the 4th landing I've done with the new flight model. I have only crashed once. And that was one of those overcorrecting situations. I got into a situation where I was upside down over the water, and I was not able to correct it before I crashed. But here's what happens if you do what we all used to do in ARMA 3, is just crank the collective to the maximum. Full left pedal. Oh my god. Okay, let's see if I can recover. Yep, you just level out. That's what you need to do when you get in those situations. Just get the aircraft level and keep the collective down to a reasonable, the first notch or the second notch, somewhere in there. You don't want it to be too high, because that's gonna help you build up rotor RPM. When your RPM starts to dip down, drop the collective a little bit. The blades will start taking a smaller bite out of the air. They'll have a much easier time speeding up. And let's see how good of a parking job I can do here. We'll see. This could get ugly. Or it could be awesome. The new gauges being there are pretty badass. Use them. The one in the middle is your artificial horizon. That one's quite handy. Having that little floating ball in the middle of your screen is nice too. That tells you how you're drifting. In addition to the ball on the vertical speed indicator. Stop drifting. There we go. Yeah, I overshot it a little bit. Not perfect, but not bad for probably my 6th landing. So, enjoy. Have fun learning to fly with the new flight model.